Hello, gorgeous heartbeat, and welcome to Heartbeats Harbor. I'm your host, Brianna Hosack, and I'm here to shine the light on the shadow path we walk as heartbeat women. Women rising into leadership roles as lightworkers, changemakers, world shakers, or as I call us, heartbeats, do not have an easy path to walk. It often feels lonely, painful, and unique, but I'm here to help you see how very not alone you are, and how beautiful the shadows surrounding you actually are when you love and integrate them on your healing journey. I create spaces and opportunities for women to step into deeper self-awareness, self-acceptance, and personal healing, community and sacred circles, as well as leadership of themselves, their families, their communities, and beyond. My business and my life is and always will be about massive change in the ways things are done around the world. I believe it's a big part of my purpose on this planet to be a voice for those who don't have one, a safe harbor for those who need one, and a beacon of light to inspire a better way. None of this is easy. I've learned that big impact requires bold action and delusional levels of confidence, as well as a ton of shadow work. If you love what you hear on this podcast and you want to be part of the growing, supportive online village of Heartbeats Harbor, make sure you join my Facebook group, which is linked below in the show notes. Now, I can't wait to get started, so let's turn on the lights.
Hey, Heartbeats. Welcome back to another episode of the Heartbeats Harbor podcast. Today, I am talking with Naomi Quinn, aka the Anxiety Avenger. She is an emotional well-being coach for neurodiverse moms and neurodiverse double-digit daughters, supporting them to overcome anxiety and trauma responses so that they can flourish in the world, not despite their neurodiversity, but because of it. She's a mom of four and a nana with a background in social work and other positions working directly with children for the last 26 years. And she aims to ignite the spark of change within 1 million plus young souls and 1 million plus older souls, guiding them on a transformative journey of emotional resilience, turning anxiety and trauma into superpowers of love and empathy. And today, she and I are going to talk about why it's so important for neurodiverse moms to build emotional resilience and learn to transform their perceived deficiencies, quote unquote, into superpowers, especially if they have young daughters, and how they can then help their daughters become the empowered leaders of the future, creating a ripple of change throughout the generations. So, welcome, Naomi. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. It's incredible to have you here. Would you
Hey,
like to
thank you for
share a
having me.
little bit more about yourself?
I've, like Bree said, I've got four children of my own who are all neurodiverse in one capacity or another. I'm neurodiverse myself, so we've got quite a big array of different disorders quoting kind of thing, because I don't class them as disorders. They're just different abilities and different ways of our brains perceiving the world around us. So there's a big spectrum within my household of what we perceive and what we don't perceive in different ways.
Okay. And was it the fact that you yourself and your kids were all neurodiverse that made you go into this line of work, or was it something else? Why did you get into this area?
So I started off coaching. I started off working just sort of with women. I've always had a passion to work with, I'd say, underprivileged, but I don't mean in the sense of financially underprivileged, or I mean children that are not seen by society, that are just dismissed because of they don't fit into the box of social conformity. So it's an area that I've always wanted to go into, because I think as my own childhood was quite a challenging one. I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until I was out of school age, and the actual formal diagnosis for me wasn't until I was 28. So I went through the whole of my education as a young person being deemed as the naughty kid, and the other people saying that I was stupid, that I was thick. So I actually internalized that for the whole of my life until I actually went back to college as an adult. And when I got the formal diagnosis and actually got taught how to learn differently, I kind of unpicked the whole thing that had kind of been put on me for the whole of my life, that this is what I am, that actually that's not what I was. It was just my brain worked very differently. So after that, it just
Mm.
kind of became an area that was like I geeked out on. I love like anything psychology. So for me, that was a chance to actually get into learning, because before I just dismissed it because I'd been told that I was all of these things that I actually wasn't.
Wow. That is incredible and hard. And here's the thing. I think that's just it, is that so many neurodiverse girls, kids, but girls in particular, especially because a lot of girls tend to, their symptoms when they are neurodiverse tend to be more on the quieter side, less obnoxious and in your face. So they don't always get noticed, right? They don't get picked up, and we don't always know that they are needing support. So I think that this is, first of all, it's a huge problem in schools that there are not different supports in place for different types of learners. And this is something that you and I are both really passionate about. And a lot of women in my audience are really passionate about, because a lot of us are neurodiverse ourselves and have neurodiverse daughters. So we are, or and kids. So I know that you specifically work with the daughters, but I've got both. I've got girls and boys that are both neurodiverse, my kids. And I it angers me a lot, actually, very, very frequently, when things come up with school where it's just so clear how much kids are expected to fit inside one size and shape of box. And I think, it's, your story is devastating. It's heartbreaking. And listening to so many stories like it, what you do is just so needed, helping these girls and these women as well, because without their mothers doing the healing to lead by example, it's a lot harder for the daughters to follow, right? So I just think it's incredible. I really love it. I also think it's incredible that you chose to go back to school after having that experience in all of grade school, and then were able to discover that, because I think a lot of people would have just given up. So that really shows just how resilient and driven you are to learn and to grow, and all of that. And it shows a lot that you were able to then move into life being a social worker, doing all of these things to help other children. It shows through really, really well that the way that our brains work has nothing to do with how smart we are. It's just a different way
Not
of
at all.
learning. Yeah.
And you know what? And I'll be honest with you. I found that I'm not saying anything negative about neurotypical people, because I don't know how their brains work. I'm not neurotypical, and it's not an area where I've really dug deep into. But I found that most neurodiverse, both boys and girls, are actually extremely intelligent, and they always have their specific area of expertise of where their hyper focus will be, because it's an area that they're passionate about and they love. And when they go into that, I love seeing them light bulb moments come, and when everything starts to ping and then everything starts to fall into place for them, when they realize that these, just changing certain little elements of how they're learning, can make such a big difference on the things that they love to do, and stop themselves from doing because they don't fit into that box that society wants them to fit into.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gives me goosebumps, just the thought of like how empowering that is for these kids to realize that, number one, they're not stupid. Number two, they actually have a unique area of brilliance, that they have something really special and big to bring to the world. And these are the ones that create change. And I agree. And it is not in any way, and I totally agree on that as well. It's not to bash anyone who is considered neurotypical. It's just, I really truly believe that those of us who are neurodiverse were given these gifts for a reason, and they are gifts and not handicaps. And so
Oh,
I love
definitely.
that so much. So when you are working with these neurodiverse moms to help them become empowered, and working with their neurodiverse daughters to help them become empowered, like that feels like a situation that could get really fraught with just overwhelm and stress and anxiety and all of that. So I love how you are called the anxiety avenger. But how does that play out a lot of the time? Like how are these things coming up? Is it sort of like on a just a as life throws things at them basis, or do you have like a specific thing that you're like, or not one thing, but specific things that you are looking for when you're talking to these women, and helping them to sort of pull out these pieces into the light so that they can look at them closely and become empowered about them, instead of hiding these pieces of themselves?
I think there's not one specific area. I think that for a lot of neurodiverse females, for me, the biggest issue that I see over and over again is masking. But you don't learn to unmask until you learn what it is that you're masking. So it's about understanding themselves from a wider perspective, which is quite tricky, but it's about unpicking and looking at their strengths and their weaknesses and being really quite honest with yourself, which can be really hard, especially when you're in society that is always putting you down because you don't fit into that box. To then go and do that deep dive into things that you're good and you're not so good at, that gives me a clearer idea of the areas where that we need to do a little bit more of a deep dive and learn how your brain works, because your brain, as a neurodiverse person, your brain just works a little bit differently. You have to go around the houses slightly. My learning style is very much hands-on, so I can't just read a book and then know what that book says. I have to read it, then write it, then leave it, then go back to it, and then reread it, and then rewrite it, because then my brain is actually taking it in. So for me to do any kind of studying, it's not a case of just sit down, read the book, make some notes, and that's it. I'm done. But again, like I say, I've learned that over time, and with going back to school and stuff, so I've learned how my brain actually perceives and works with things, which is something we're not taught at school. We're not taught that your brain works in different ways, so you have to learn in different ways. So I've found that a lot of people who feel that their weaknesses is in a certain area, it's actually not a weakness. It's not a weakness at all. It's just an area that they've not learned to tap into, and they've not learned how to navigate around that area, so to speak. Like, if I talk about emotional well-being, we've learned as a society that there's bad emotions. There's no bad emotions. Every emotion is valid and needed. So we learned that we have to suppress that. We have to suppress the anger. We have to suppress the sadness, because it's not what society wants to see from us. So a lot of people see that as a weakness. They see that if they're angry, it's a weakness on their part, that they're an angry person, and they get labelled with that. Then people see that as that's an area where they have to try and hide themselves. Well, actually, no, that's an area where we need to look at how can you express that part of you in a way that is safer for you to do, but is also safer for society to do. So it's not about fitting into society's little box. It's about fitting into what's right for you, but also in a way that it's not going to be, society is not going to be frowning upon you, because that's what we don't want. We don't want to be like, I'm quite loud and garish, and I can hold my own quite a bit. I don't like, do you know what I mean? People can look at me and I don't care, do you know? But I know not everybody's like that, and some people are not going to want to stand out in certain circles and stuff. So if you get angry in a situation, how are you going to manage that anger? How are you going to contain yourself so it's not impacting on your body negatively? Because as we know, emotions get stored in our body if we're not letting them pass through properly. So if you're not actually dealing with it in that time, like, you need to deal with it as quickly afterwards as possible to be able to actually move through the process of the emotions. So when people are seeing
Right,
areas as weak,
instead of burying it, yes. And
yeah,
that's just it, right? You've got this people who are like, they're covering it up in front of others, which we understand, but then they're not going home later and dealing with it. They're just leaving it buried. And like you said, masking, and I think you really hit on it there. That masking is a really key piece, right? A lot of us masked for so long that we don't even know who we are, and like you said, they're needing to learn who they even are before they can start to learn the tools to manage it.
yeah, and it's really hard, because like I say, society is very outdated. Like, the societal norms are very outdated, and like when people talk about deficits, like with ADHD, a deficit, it's not a deficit. There is no deficit there.
No.
Like, and that really, really, really pisses me off, because you're telling somebody in that diagnosis that there is something that's missing from them. It's not. There's nothing missing. their neuro pathways just work differently. They go around the houses a little bit, but it's not a deficiency. They're not lacking in something. It's not like they don't have the vitamins. Like, that's a deficiency when you don't have the vitamins in your
Yeah.
body. But when you've got
Yeah.
a different, like when they say like ADHD, like it's a deficiency. No, it's not a deficiency. It's not. It's just your brain works differently,
No, it
and you
is.
need to
Yeah.
learn. Yeah. So I do think, like, I would love to petition to get the wording changed with ADHD.
Oh my gosh, right? I know. And really, like, if you think
That's
about
a
it,
rabbit
it's
hole.
like, okay, there are some people who are incredible with math and science and stuff, and they go, down the path to becoming doctors and physicians and all of these kinds of things. And then there are people who are incredible with, social studies in school, and they follow the path of a historian, and they help us connect to the past. And then there's people who are amazing with language, and they're able to orate and speak really clearly, and all of them have different parts of their brains that are stronger than the others. Do they get told that they have a deficiency? No. So really, this is the
No.
same thing. ADHD is just, you have a different strength than what, you're right, the outdated versions of what society tells us is the norm, right? And it's, if anybody is saying that there's a deficiency in it, well, you're struggling in this area. You could very easily flip that and say, okay, but I flourish in this one. Do you? Right? So
Yeah.
it's like, we really all have our own strengths, and I totally agree. We are not deficient, and there's a lot of unlearning to do along with that unmasking. There's a lot of learning to love ourselves, and learning to, like you said, being told your whole life you're stupid or anything like that, that leaves a mark. That's not something that you just flip a switch on and suddenly feel good about yourself after that, once you realize that you had
No.
something that was blocking you from learning in the way they were trying to teach you. So it's quite a journey. And I know, I've been on a similar path, as far as having to unlearn that, like, self-hatred, like beating yourself up because you've been told so many times how much of a failure you are. And it's painful, it's not fast, and it takes a lot of resilience and strength to work through it and not give up. So I would love for you to tell me a little bit about, maybe give some examples of how these girls are flourishing with the support they receive from you and from their moms who have worked with you as well, and who are now empowered to have that emotional resilience and everything. Because I think the key here, right, is there's a lot of like, oh, just tell your kids this, but no, you need to lead by example. And so
No.
if you're only
Yeah.
working with the kids, then they're watching the example of these disempowered and not emotionally resilient mothers who are teaching them how to actually be, versus the words that we're telling them, right? So we can do all the book learning possible about how we're supposed to be emotionally resilient, but if you don't actually integrate it yourself, then you can't really teach it to your kids, because they do
No.
learn through example. And I think all kids, not just neurodiverse kids, learn through example, right? We
Yeah.
see it all the time, where it's, the old adage of like, do what I say, not what I do. Well, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that.
No. And it makes me laugh because I think, like, we've gone through, like, you've got the different generations are called different sort of, like, you've got the baby boomers and you've got this and that, and it makes me laugh that none of them have actually realized that it's actually, we all work differently, and not just because of the generation's different, because the perception of those like us that are trying to make a change and trying to make a wave makes that little bit of a difference, which then changes the next generation's perception of things. But going back on to kind of how it impacts the girls, is that as adults, unlearning what's been drummed into us, the shit that society puts on us for years, is really, really hard to do. And like we just said, it takes a lot and a lot of grit. But when you're getting into working with younger girls to support them to they are unlearning in a sense, because they're unlearning what's been expected of them so far, but they're learning newer and better ways for them to cope with their emotions, and what they should accept from themselves and accept from others. And when I say accept, I mean in the sense that, like I said, we talk about anger being a bad thing. So I'm going to talk about anxiety now. Everyone talks about anxiety as this really big bad wolf, but actually anxiety is is not just a mental health condition, it's actually something that is emotional, psychological, and physiological. And it's there because that's part of going back to the caveman days. That's part of keeping us safe. Anxiety is
Yeah.
the tell that there's something happening here that I'm not quite sure if we're going to be okay with it. And tapping
It's
into that.
different. It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and getting the younger girls to tap into them anxious feelings rather than going, oh, I don't like that, and shutting off because everybody's talking about anxiety and it's quite a big of a buzzword at the moment. And they, I think there's a real big confusion with anxiety being something that's a challenging impact on somebody's life and anxious feelings. There is a big difference between the two.
Hmm.
There's like anxiety and there's anxious feelings. And right now I'm talking about anxious feelings and not so much the anxiety. So when you get them anxious feelings, it's about how can you navigate where that anxious feeling's coming from. But without knowing yourself and coming back and doing that work and being able to sit with yourself and listen to your body, okay, is this coming from my stomach? Is it like the pit of my stomach? Is this oh, I don't quite feel comfortable here? Or is this coming like a heart flutter, like, well, this is exciting. Like, I really quite like this. It's like, oh, it's something that's going to be good. Or is it coming from your brain where your brain's going 100 mile an hour and is this good? Isn't
Yeah.
this good? Is it? And your brain's doing the pros and cons and everything's being thrown at you. So it's when you're able to actually slow it down a little bit and listen to where it's coming from, you can then tap into, actually, is this situation something that's dangerous and that I need to analyze kind of where my safety network is and what my safety aspects are, and whether or not I put myself into this situation, or whether it is something it's just uncomfortable and you want to push through that. And how can you push through that safely? Because if you're going into anxious feelings and trying to be a bit of a bull in a china shop and just go, nah, it's fine, I can just do this, and be like a head first, that's not going to help you moving forwards, because you're not going to be
Mhm.
processing the feelings and the thought processes. You're just going to be putting another brick in that area of shit, what the hell am I doing? Like, you have to be able to
Well,
stop and
and
listen and understand.
yeah, and as you said, if you are burying that, if you're sort of putting up that brick wall, that is where the clinical anxiety that is destroying people's lives comes from. Is
Yeah.
is instead of working through that, it's just holding onto it, hiding it, and forcing your way through like a bull in a china shop, like you said. So it's when you keep piling that on again and again and again, and it's the repetition that really does you in. And I think that that is what's so incredible about what you do, because not only are you taking these adult women, these moms who have lived like you had an entire childhood, probably with those disempowered messages about themselves and about how stupid they are, or, different things like that. Or, I could go so far into that, but you're working with them not only to set that example, but you're also working with the girls. And here's the thing, working with the kids is so key, because then you're not having to undo decades of this trauma, right? You may have a little
Yeah.
bit from before they got to you, right? But it's not as much as the moms who are a whole lifetime of this mess. So you're really attacking it from both sides. You're making sure that they're getting the example, and you're also making sure that you're undoing that little bit of messaging that they've had, which is already harmful enough, before it really
Yeah.
compounds over time, similar to when we're burying our emotions. It's that repetitive thing that really is destructive. So I love that you're kind of getting to them before it can get so far and so many
And just
layers
think of
built
the
onto
change
it.
that generation can do.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're change makers. We're there trying to really put things out into the world and make it a better place. Now, undoing years and years, like you say, like decades of trauma and all the stored emotions and stuff to unpick. If we're nipping that in the butt before it gets to that, and look at the changes that we're making in the world. What do you think our girls are going to be able to do? They are going to be
They're
able
going to
to
change
really
everything.
make a difference. Yeah, they're going to be able to excel and actually show the world what it is to
Uh-oh.
be like somebody who's a light worker, being able to actually live in their own selves. Like I think it's just going to be immense. It will be absolutely like world changing.
Well, and you know that my big mission is putting more women in leadership around the world. So, I mean, you're just supplementing, you're funneling these women in for me to put into leadership roles. Let's just say that because literally these girls are going to be the empowered leaders of the future, right? And I fully believe that women should be in leadership. Like, and not in a men suck way, but just in a women are much more intuitive, women are much more like naturally caring about the human race, right? They're a lot less
Yeah,
harsh, they're a lot less forceful, all of that kind of thing. So I think that women are ideally cut out to be leaders, and we have been pushed down by patriarchal roles and all of that kind of stuff to not be in those roles. And now we're taking not only, you know, women like myself who are trying to help more women become empowered and step into leadership in the world. But now what you're doing is you're addressing that next generation so that they don't have to, like you said, undo all the traumas first and then learn how to become
yeah.
that empowered leader. Instead, they are just growing up to already be those empowered leaders. And here's what's even more like, I just got chilled thinking about it is like, think about their daughters, the kind of women they're going to
Oh
be like,
God,
whoa, right?
that's
So
yeah.
yeah. So like the ripple, we talk about a ripple of change through the generations, but when you really look at it from that perspective, like I'm specifically empowering women who are already adults to step into more leadership in the world. You are helping these girls. You're also helping their mothers, which does help them to lead, especially in their own families and all of that stuff. But you are helping these girls to grow up as already leaders. And these girls are going to be so empowered that when they are having children, their children will never know the traumas, period.
Yeah. And that's
And
one of
that is
my big,
unreal.
yeah.
Like that ripple is massive.
In a world where there isn't that trauma being stored and being passed down by generations, it would just, we rule the world.
Yes, yes. And I, you know, I really, there was a point where I was like, you know, it was almost more like take men out of the picture. Not kill the men, but like, but you know, like it was just like so much trauma caused by patriarchal values and stuff. But it's not that men can't lead; it's that there needs to be that balance, right? So, but yes, really, women are designed for this. So yeah, I really love the work that you do. I think it's so important. And as we've been talking, like my brain is just going to woman after woman after woman in my audience who I know and I speak to on a daily basis. And all of them who are going to be like, yes, like this is what I need. This is what my kids need. This is what the world needs, right? Like it's so important. It hits so close to home. It's so close to my heart and to a lot of the women in my audience's hearts as well. So I absolutely just I love what you're doing. Can you share maybe a tip with us that neurodiverse moms in my audience can implement, that they can use in their day-to-day life to start building that emotional resilience and feeling that empowerment?
Um, so I suppose a lot of people within our networks will be doing gratituding and things like that anyway. So they're things that I would just be saying do because they're just absolutely amazing tools. But I think for me, one of the big things that I've been doing lately with my daughter, all of her trauma with unschooling and stuff, is writing down the 3 negative feelings through the day, because like we said, we talk about negative feelings in a bad light when actually there's a lot to learn from them. So not just doing the
Mm.
gratitude in where you're writing down what's been good in your day, but also recognizing the things that have not been so good in your day, and then trying to flip them and like, what could you do
Into a
differently?
learning.
So you're reflecting on, okay, this is how I felt in this situation, what could I've done differently? If anything, there might be, I was pissed off because somebody pissed me off. That you can't change that. how did
And
you
maybe it's
process
just
that
about the
emotion?
acceptance, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's also about how did you process that emotion? Did you store it or did you let it out? Like, did you let it go? So just having that reflect every day, having that reflection of I'd say 3 because that's quite a good size number of things to reflect on. But just 3
Yeah, not
things
too
that
overwhelming.
yeah, so just sort of 3 areas that you could reflect on in the day that didn't go to plan or wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, and look at how you could potentially change that. Did you process the emotions and did you allow them to flow? Did you store them? If you did store them, how are you going to release that now? Because it's still the end of the day, you still can release them emotions. So are you going to go and do a meditation,
Yes.
or are you going to go and do some tribal dancing, or you're going to do some crystal bowls, or what you're going to do to release it for the day? So before you go to bed, you're not storing that anymore. Them things that are then held in
Oh,
you are just relieved. They're gone.
that is incredible, actually. And that is, I love it because you're right. So many people, like, you ask, okay, like, what are the tips? And those are the easy tips. The easy tips are practice gratitude and, focus on the positive, like all of these kinds of things. But I love this so much. And here's why. Okay, I want to dig into this a little bit because I actually personally, as a neurodiverse child, I buried everything. And I was taught to bury everything. And I didn't feel safe to share any of it or, whatever. And I buried so much that I actually have almost no memories of my childhood. Because and what I've discovered in my own journey of like trying to learn how did that happen? How can I uncover them? Can I bring them back out? All of that is that actually that time of reflection is what anchors in our memories so that we can remember them. So when we ignore them, when we blow them off, I've found out that it's actually more common than I realized that people don't remember big chunks of their childhood because they have blocked it out so much because there was so much emotion tied to it, and they thought that emotion was bad, and so they just like nixed it right out, right? And I think I want to bring that forward. I want to say that specifically so that anyone who's listening to this, be it the mom or be it the daughter, right? Because we both know, you and I both know that we are including our kids in this learning as we're going because we want them to have these tools, right? No
Yeah,
matter which one you are. If writing down the 3 negative emotions that came to you today or that you experienced today feels intimidating, if that feels like, oh, no, 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 I don't want to look at that. I want you to look forward to in the future, the fact that you won't remember this experience and you won't learn from it. You won't learn and grow if you do not anchor it and if you do not reflect on it. So this is a really powerful practice. And this is not your average everyday little like, yeah, here's a quick tip for you. This is actually a really powerful transformative tip. Like Naomi, that was gold. I wrote that down. I have been reflecting on my day daily, but I have not been applying this with my kids. And what a powerful shift and I don't even think it necessarily has to be written. So, like when your kids are a little bit younger, because I've got really young kids, I think it would even be really
yeah,
powerful for my kids who are not well, my 7-year-old is able to write it out, but he doesn't want to write. He likes to like copy what someone else wrote for him, but he doesn't want to like create it himself. So for him, just
yeah,
even verbalizing it though, like what were these 3 things? And then talking through that with him and having that conversation so that it anchors in for him. And I am then preventing him from forgetting his childhood, which is so critical and so foundational. And it's everything about who you are and how you became who you are as an adult and all of that stuff. So to not remember it's really hard actually to figure out
yeah,
who you even are inside if you can't remember what your childhood was and what shaped you. So, what a
yeah.
powerful tool to end this with. I'm blown away. Thank you. Thank you for
That's that's
and
okay.
I didn't
I'm
even
glad
tell
it's
you I was
helpful.
going to ask you that. So there was no prep for that, people. She is amazing. So Naomi, really quick to wrap this up, how can people find you, whether they want to work with you, learn from you, just sort of be in your energy because we all love your energy? Where can people go to find you?
So Facebook is my main place that I am. I have my profile, which is Naomi Quinn, comma, the Anxiety Avenger, or TikTok is the other place that I tend to be. And again, it's Naomi Quinn, the Anxiety Avenger. So try to keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And then I know you also have a Facebook group. What is your Facebook group
Yes.
specifically for?
So it's just starting out at the moment. So the plan for it is that I will be doing little nuggets of like little golden nuggets like I just did. So little coping mechanisms, also some question and answers if there's things that's going on, a supportive place for mums to come and just unmask yourself, just come in and talk about what it is that's going on for you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, this is how we are going to be able to come out the other side, is actually acknowledging what's going on for us and stop burying our heads in the sand, because that is something that is a superpower that we don't want. That is like a negative superpower. We don't want the burying the head in the sand. We want to be able to
Yes.
come out and use the superpowers in the right way, and not in the way, like you say, where we're not really living life and learning and understanding and holding memories. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a supportive container for everyone to just come in and be themselves and get help and support and advice, and little bits of golden nuggets coming in as and when they come to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And I'm sure, I mean, you came up with that one on the spot. I'm sure there are so many more that women can learn from you. And I also know Naomi personally through, like, we've worked together for quite a while now, and I just know that her as a soul, she's an incredible person. So you're in good hands if you are working with her in any capacity, from free to paid, right? There's always different options. So we will definitely drop all of your links in the show notes for this episode. And I just really want to thank you for coming and talking with me today and shining a light on this sort of piece of the shadows that a lot of us have, that we've buried from our childhoods and from the expectations of society and all of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I will be back next time with our final episode for season 2. We'll talk to you all next time.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe to be notified of new episodes. If you really love it here and want to help spread the light, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. They help so much. If you love listening and want to be part of the interactive and incredible online community we're growing, make sure you click the link in the description box and join the Facebook group. I promise you it is not like other groups you've been in. Hope to meet you there soon, and I'll be talking to you next week, sending you all my love from my heartbeat to yours.